Morning, Alf. A lot of people have been riding the high of the sports card trading card bull market.
The best case buy we have ever done. People say, it's too random. What can I get? What am I guaranteed? What if we told you that you were going to be guaranteed to get one of 4 complete sets that book between $450 and $600 a set?
But we have to shout out some of the follies along the way.
I have been thinking about opening a card shop. I'm not quitting. I'm evolving.
That go back a few years, 5 years, and some of them more recent that might surprise you. We're going to look at some of the biggest card drops today, some as much as 95% for certain players. It can be tumultuous out there. It can be volatile. So make sure you keep your head on a swivel. Before I dive in, shout out to our channel partners. Make sure to take $25 off your first PSA order with the SCD25 promo code at the shipping and billing screen. Just a 1 card minimum to try out PSA. Take advantage. The hobby is not getting any cheaper, my friends. Make sure my video description, all the promo codes, hobby promo codes you could want, they're down there for discounts for you. I'm the retail me not of the sports card hobby. JustCollect.com. You've got a collection to sell. Have no idea where to go with it. The folks over there at Just Collect, very easy appraisal form there. I've got my own landing page, got a link in the video description there as well. If you want to sell half the collection, 10% of the collection, or all of it, they can help assess what it would look like for you. So make sure to check out my link below. All right, so we're going to look at a few cards here, and some of them are easy ones. Yes, I'm going to talk about 2019 Zion Prism Base, but I'm going to talk about ones that are off the radar, so make sure you stay tuned here. But first, a little bit of a monologue before we get started, because, man, you hear so much about cards going up and, oh, this is going ballistic and this and that, but there's so many different pockets here in the sports card world. Even in this bull market, we just had the Baltimore News Babe Ruth that sold for what, $6 or $7 million a couple years ago, just sold for $4 million here recently. A pretty big loss, $2 or $3 million loss, and we don't know kind of the ins and outs of that transaction. Was it tax harvesting? Was there a plan behind it? Did the person need the money, or had they made gains elsewhere trying to sell off, take a loss over here? Who knows? This is high net worth people stuff that is way over my head. We don't really know what happened there, but it could be that there was a financially sound reason to do so, and it might just be over our heads. But anyway, that will go down as a massive loss for that particular card. And we look at the Wonder Shine Index. These guys, the Shine and the Wonder guy, and Mr. Wonderful and the other guy, they're buying cards, a lot of private sales, and they're paying top dollar. They're setting new records, and some will say, well, yeah, I've bought cards over the years and I've set records on those cards, and then it's worked out for me in the end type thing. Yeah, but man, this is different territory. We're talking about 5 million here, 7 million there, 10 million, $12.9 million, the highest price paid for a trading card ever. These are not necessarily, as we've seen with the Babe Ruth card, these are not necessarily locks to go up in value over time. What is the upside on cards like these when you're setting just huge upward sales on these? You're not getting them at bargains. The guy that really won with that Kobe Jordan 1 of 1, the dual logo man that just sold, was the guy that bought it for what, 150 grand, and then 10 years later sold it for 12.9 million. That's where the biggest return on that card is ever going to come from. Could there be upside on that card going into the future, the 12.9 million? Could it be a $20 million card? Sure. Could it be 50? Could it be 100? I guess maybe. But what are the odds there? But it just seems like a lot of money to spend to attempt to generate, a nice return. And maybe they're going to fractionalize out. They've got a whole business plan around how they're going to do it. But I will not be buying into the fractional shares of those at the price points that they bought in. We saw this going back years ago, where companies like Collectible, they bought into these trading card assets, we'll call that assets in quotation marks, and they bought again in a bull market where they were paying high prices and then having to fractionalize it, and then people that bought the fractions, and then you take the fees out. It's like, does it make any sense? I don't know. I don't think that if they fractionalize it out, that's going to be a great deal for the investors. I could be wrong. Maybe there's some sort of really cool, wicked new way to spin money around and it makes sense. I'm not going to participate in it though. So I think bottom line here is, even in a bull market, we got to be really careful because hindsight's always 20/20. I've noticed here there's a lot of people getting back into the hobby. They're new to the hobby here over the last 3 months, 6 months, a year, not necessarily been through that pandemic boom that we had. And hindsight is, like I said, it's always 20/20, to where in 2020, 2021, it felt like, oh, this stuff is just going to keep on going up. And then it did not do that. It did not. It was quite the opposite.
Pick out 1 or 2 guys and buy some cards. But if you do it strictly as investment, that's the only reason, you will get burned eventually. And you'll get burned pretty hard because maybe only 1 out of every 5 rookies will make it. I mean, I can name guys like Sam Horn and Joe Charbonneau that people bought like crazy. They were out of baseball.
And so when people come in and they say like, hey, look, I know we're hitting highs on these cards here in 2025. Sure, they could go higher. Absolutely. It could kind of be a steady climb, but it also can retract. It can retract back. We've seen it. Collectibles can be a fickle beast. They aren't regulated traditional markets. There are cards that can be manipulated. There's a lot of moving parts in collectibles. So the idea that we just kind of have all that figured out as to, oh, well, this card will continue going up. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. And actually, I'm going to start, when I'm talking about cards here that have moved downward, I'm going to pick a vintage card on purpose just to kind of display here that we're not just talking about base prisms for modern cards. I'm going to use one example, but there's many, many examples if we look at vintage cards as well as modern, going back and comparing some of these 2020 and 2021 numbers. Now, to be fair, one thing I want to throw out here too, though, is for the vintage cards, the one I'm going to talk about first is a 61 Fleer Wilt Chamberlain rookie and a PSA 8. We're using card ladder data here. Absolutely insane card. Love this card. Would love to own a copy of it. I'll never be able to afford an 8, I don't think. But when we're looking at these price points, especially for vintage, and even when we talk about the 86 Fleer, the 86 Fleer Jordan went up to $750,000 or $800,000. People act like it was selling at that like all day. Like there was dozens and dozens. There was hundreds of sales at $750,000, $800,000, and then it came back down. No. There was like a handful of sales that got up to $750,000, $800,000. It's similar here where I'm kind of picking out, it's cherry picking data a little bit, but it's just showing the risks involved. Somebody paid here for this Wilt, $144,000. That was the all-time high, but that's one sale. So it's one sale got that high. It's not as if there was a bunch of sales up in that range. That's why when you look at these graphs, it's like this, and then it's like, the Mount Everest, and then it pops down because it's usually one sale, two sales, maybe it's a handful of sales. It's not a lot of sales. So I think that's something to keep in mind. Not a lot of sales volume here with this particular card. $144,000 in March of 2021. A recent sale had this card at $38,000. Again, with vintage cards, there's some nuance because eye appeal plays a role. You can have 8s that look amazing. You can have 8s that are off-centered. So it really just depends on beauty is in the eye of the beholder when it comes to vintage cards in general. But this one down 74%. If we're looking at that sale versus a recent sale, the all-time high, and where we're at today. We're going to go back to the pandemic pricing, but I want to throw a couple of examples here that were after that boom, because some people think like, you know what? That's just making comparisons to that crazy time in 2021. Well, actually, there's been just crazy drops all the way around through the years. An example here that I found, 2020 Bowman, Anthony Volpe, Chrome Prospect Auto, PSA 10, March of 2022. So this is after prices have started to drop on trading cards. March of 22 was kind of like bear market zone. This card is a hot baseball prospect. Is he the next Yankee? Is he that next guy? $1,700 sale. Now, here recently, $137 for this card. That is minus 92%.
What I am so proud of is the fact that these collectors are clearly satisfied with the service.
Anthony Volpe, one of these guys. And again, when you play for the Yankees, expectations are up here, and everyone's looking for that next Yankee. Volpe was one of these guys, and this is an example. This is just one example. I'm sure he has a lot of card examples that are worse than this. I just picked one out here to use as an example. Football quarterbacks. Remember this guy? Zach Wilson, the Jets' #2 overall pick. I remember just looking at this guy on draft night. I don't know what it is. He just looked like he was 13 years old. I think he's like 5'8", or 5'10" or something. It's like, I know Drew Brees did it, but everybody's always compares to Drew Brees. Who's the NFL comp for Zach Wilson? Oh, he's not 6'4", so it's Drew Brees. It's like, guys, there's only been like one Drew Brees that's 5'10" that can sling it around for 70,000 plus yards, a zillion touchdowns. He is the unicorn in the group of 5'10" quarterbacks that have made it happen in the NFL. So Zach Wilson, base prism, PSA 10, August 2022. Again, this is not like bull market territory. This is bear market territory. A lot of excitement around Zach Wilson. He had a PSA 10 base prism at $185. Actually, I think there was a sale higher than this. But in that $150 to $200 range, let's say, now $9. $9 for a PSA 10. You can't even grade it for $9 these days. That's 95% down. 95% down. And it just shows you quarterbacks, man. It's just like you're dodging landmines with modern quarterbacks. Guys can actually be really good, and prices still do crazy stuff. You know, a guy that's resurrected his career, Baker Mayfield. I bought and sold Baker Mayfield over the years, going back through the pandemic, and did pretty well on Baker Mayfield cards because there was kind of an ebb and flow to his stuff. It was really hot, then he was cold, it was hot again, you know, and you were able to kind of buy and sell those cards. But even with him, and that's a guy that has a promising career ahead, you would think, who knows? Like, are you going big into Baker Mayfield cards? Some people are, and some people are just fans of the guy, and that's fine. But Baker Mayfield, I just heard a couple weeks ago, he's up for like MVP consideration. Are his cards moving? No. You know, they're not. People are spooked. I think people rightfully so are spooked on NFL quarterbacks. It just takes a weird turn of events. I always like to use Carson Wentz as an example of this. He's quarterback of the Eagles. We're in like week 4 or 5 or something. He's having a great, was it week 4? Maybe it was week 8 or something, a little bit deeper in. But anyway, the guy's having a great season. Eagles look great. And he goes down with a season-ending injury. The backup quarterback comes in, wins the Super Bowl over Tom Brady and the Patriots. And the rest is really history. Carson Wentz has never been the same ever since then. A lot of number 1 overall picks. Kyler Murray just got benched for the Cardinals. He's probably going to be elsewhere. You know, Baker Mayfield had to bounce around. He was a number 1 overall pick. He played for the Rams, he played for the Panthers, and then he's landed with the Bucks. I mean, it is tumultuous out there. Guys can be at the very top. Jaden Daniels, gem rate just graded, I think July, August. It was June or July. June, July, I believe the data is that Jaden Daniels was the most graded football player, period, in June and July. So all summer, people grading Jaden Daniels cards, grading him. And now what? He's beat up, he's been injured, and what are you going to do there? You know, Caleb Williams, number 1 overall pick, he's looked meh, he's okay. You know, the list goes on and on. So I thought I'd bring up Zach Wilson, number 2 overall pick, a guy that, you know, high hopes there with the Jets and has just kind of fluttered since. Let's throw out another guy while we're talking quarterbacks. 2018 Prism, Josh Rosen. This was the miss of that draft. You had Lamar Jackson, who's been amazing. You have, of course, Josh Allen, who's been pretty good too. Josh Allen's a beast. And then you've got Josh Rosen. And actually, I remember when, who took Josh Rosen? Was it the Cardinals? I believe they drafted him. I actually thought Josh Rosen was going to be really good. He played at Cal, I believe. I don't know. I just thought this guy was good. He had kind of some moxie to him. I thought he was going to be a good player. Look at that. I can't scout players either. PSA 10 for Josh Rosen, September 2020. These are $40, $50. Now they're $4 or $5. Pretty sure he's out of the league. Maybe, is he a backup? No, I'm pretty sure he's out of the league. 90% drop.
I'm not quitting. I'm evolving.
2011 Topps Update, Mike Trout, PSA 10. The darling of Major League Baseball for a long time. Really, when you look at the pandemic boom and what led to that, it was, the Vegas guy, Vegas Dave, bought and sold a huge refractor, 1 of 1 of Trout. What did he buy it for? A couple $100,000 and sold it for a few million. Anyway, he did really well. Now, the one thing that Vegas Dave, he hasn't followed up on this, but he also was big into Derek Carr. That didn't work out as well. I'm a New Orleans Saints fan. I know exactly how that ended. So he didn't get them all right, but that was kind of, Mike Trout, he was the hobby darling. Before Shohei Ohtani took that crown, it was Mike Trout. The Topps Update, Mike Trout, the PSA 10 is very available. In February 2021, this one got up to $6,300. There were sales in the $5,000-$6,000 range for this card. Now it sits at $725. I think there's 5,000 or 6,000 PSA 10s on the pop report. It's not a rare card. The issue with this too is like, it's high pop, but it's a legend. This is an iconic card. This is an all-time baseball card. But now just the way that Trout's career has gone over the last 5 years, I think there's question marks around that. He's always going to be a generational player. He's always going to be a very popular player, great stats, but the stat line, what he was projected to do and what has finished out for him is not the same. It's bad. So this is down 88% since that pandemic boom.
No, please don't hate. No, God, damn it!
Luka Doncic, playing well for the Lakers. He looks like that next guy. Hasn't won anything yet, but he is top 5 NBA player. Top 5 in the league. His base prism, PSA 10, it got up in August of 2020 up to $2,000. It's down to about $180, $190 now, and this is a guy that's playing well. He's consistently good. He's actually turned out to be an NBA star. He doesn't have the titles. He doesn't have the accolades yet, but he's an NBA star. It actually worked out okay. But this is down 91% since August of 2020. And especially when you think of where other assets have gone. When you look at real estate, when you look at Bitcoin, when you look at the stock market, when you look at gold, all of these things have really gone parabolic. So if you have all your money in this type of stuff, if you're card heavy net worth, for these particular cards, this is where it gets a little bit scary because we're in a world, we've talked about this, monetary policy, inflation going like this. can't afford to have these types of drops, really. I mean, and that's why I think a lot of people have become more conservative. People, that is the reason to me why you've seen money moving to the GOATs. It didn't work out for that particular Babe Ruth card, but I do think that that's why you've seen money move to the Mantles and the Babe Ruths and the Jordans and the Kobes or whatever. Like, that's why people have, while they're still prospecting, a lot of money has been lost over the last 5 years on prospecting. I mean, a lot of money. It went parabolic. It's corrected back, and we've certainly lost people, but we've also had people just refine the strategy. I'm certainly one of those people. I'll do some prospecting stuff here and there, but it's limited. I'm usually just buying iconic cards, or I'm buying GOATs or whatever. We'll finish out with Zion Williamson. Of course, we have to. I don't think the Pelicans have won a game yet this year. I'm seeing all the reports. The Zion experiment is over. Guys, the Zion experiment was a disaster from day one. I mean, this guy was injured for the first 3 or 4 years of his career. He signed like $1 billion contract, $200+ million contract with the Pelicans. Disaster zone. 2019 Prism Base PSA 10. This was a $400 card at one point going back to January 2021. I remember being at a couple different nationals where Zion stuff was always kind of heated. It was always hot. And now $21 for this card. It's a $20 card in a PSA 10, down 95%. And so kind of a big picture takeaway that I want to put out there is we have a bull market surge in interest in our hobby. We do. We have that. There's no denying that. For all price points, I think, whether it's low end, mid end, high end. But when you have a lot of focus, and you can't blame the manufacturers for this, but when you have a lot of focus on selling that new product, which in large part is going to sell based on a prospect, the Cooper Flags of the world. It's going to be sold on the Dylan Harpers. It's going to be sold on the newest baseball prospect. You have to remember that this is usually how it pans out. Occasionally, something crazy happens and you get a Patrick Mahomes type boom, to where the guy is inexpensive, you can get in and his stuff has gone crazy. But the Mahomes are just so few and far between. The Mahomes and the Ohtanis, so few and far between when you really look at all the different players. And maybe that's part of the fun, is trying to find the needle in the haystack, and you look at your prospect, you're watching sports and trying to figure out who's going to be that next guy. But as companies, breakers, influencers trying to sell that new product, just know kind of how the game works. And I'm saying this because, as I said, there's a lot of people that have been here for the last 5 years plus, and there's a lot of people that might be watching this video that got in 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 6 months ago, and they're trying to figure out, okay, do I buy packs? Do I buy the boxes? Do I buy singles? What do I do? And this is just kind of a cautionary tale here that even in a bull market, not everything goes up. That's all I've got today, my friends. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.